So a very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to allow a couple of minutes, 1 minute, just to enable people to join into the conference. Let's just give them a minute. So please be patient. One more minute. Promise you it won't take much longer than that. So shall we, just to mention to everyone, the session is being recorded. So I hope you don't have a problem with the proceedings being recorded. So it will be made available later on our APMEN and also the OREN websites for people who may not have been able to participate. I see a good number of familiar faces and names. Wonderful to see you all here again. Thank you for making time to join us on this conference. So Dr. Rose, I'm not sure if you're available. We were hoping that you could open the afternoon session. Dr. Rose, are you available perhaps? I think not. So on behalf of Dr. Rose, our chairman for the APMEN Vector Control Working Group, to everyone linked in, sincere thank you for participating. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Wonderful group of people. So a very warm welcome to today, our third day of proceedings in our annual, what should be an annual Vector Control Working Group, and hopefully in future it will definitely be annual again, despite last year having been missed out. So just a very quick review. Our first day of the conference was last week, Monday the 10th, which was the opening and setting the stage for the conference. This is just a quick overview. I'll try and be very fast. Tom Burkhardt and Tanya Russell reviewed the status of vector surveillance capacity globally as per the 2018 survey. Then Stefan Karl talked about the disturbing shortfalls in BedNet bioefficacy, at least in Papua New Guinea. Serious shortfalls in even after 6 months after commencement of BedNet use, a dramatic decline in BedNet bioefficacy, which is probably far more widespread than just in Papua New Guinea, and then followed by presentations on vector surveillance and control in India and Indonesia by Dr. Kalpana Barua and Dr. Budianto. Great presentations, lots of information of great interest there. Thank you for that. And then on Wednesday, the 12th, last week, we listened to a presentation from Elodie Vajda explaining the new University of California, San Francisco entomology surveillance planning tool. And I think, or I hope you all agree, this is a powerful tool that could support high quality vector surveillance programs within NMCPs with great guidance on all aspects of implementing such a state-of-the-art surveillance program. And then we moved into 3 breakaway groups to assess capacity building needs for improved vector surveillance in each of the 3 geographic clusters that APMEN kind of breaks the Asia-Pacific region up into South Asia, Greater Mekong sub-region, and then the peninsula down to Melanesia. But there was a 4th group looking at available skills within Asia-Pacific as well. That exercise of identifying skills shortfalls, training needs is going to help APMEN a great deal in developing training support together with the other ideas that are coming out of the discussion forum. So collectively, the 4 days are going to contribute wonderful guidance to APMEN as to how APMEN can try and put together support packages to help especially our National Malaria Control Program partners. And we thank you for that help. Today, we're going to have an introductory scene-setting presentation by Dr. Jenorin Jelip on vector surveillance in Malaysia. Malaysia has achieved a sustained multi-year cessation of local transmission of falciparum and vivax. But of course, Malaysia still faces the challenge of Plasmodium knowlesi. And then we have Lucia Fernandez Montoya of WHO, who will tell us about a great new WHO developed tool that can take the endo surveillance data generated by country national malaria control programs and place that data on a common platform with case surveillance and other epidemiological data to enable an integrated analysis of malaria epidemiological factors for holistic interrogation and decision making on one platform, everything together. We can look at the interaction, interplay of factors, visualize it, overlays of visualization, and so on. So without further ado, I'd like to ask, sorry, Tin?
Dr. Rose is here, Leo.
Okay, so Dr. Jenner, and I almost handed over to you, but please, I'm going to ask Dr. Rose, please could you welcome our wonderful group of participants. I just want to mention,
Yes.
we're standing at 81 participants at the bottom there. You can see that. That is misleading because our audience is split into panelist mode, which this number 82 reflects, and then webinar mode, which is a great deal more. So you're only seeing a part of the number of participants reflected here. So we're having good participation again, and that is very heartwarming to see the enthusiasm and willingness of people to join in. Dr. Rose, good to see you present. It would be great,
Yeah.
good to have a word of welcome from you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Leo. I think thank you very much for your opening for your briefing today. I am sorry because I think even on the 12th, the other day, I was following you all until halfway, but I was called for an urgent meeting, so I have to left the meeting before the end. So today, I hope I can join you all till the end. I would like to welcome all the distinguished participants in this conference. I hope you all will have a fruitful conference today. And today is our topic, improved integration of vector and case surveillance for optimized local focal response. So I think this is integrations of vector management and also case surveillance is very important in our program, so that we can establish a good program and comprehensive towards eliminating malaria in our country. So I hope all the participants today will enjoy this conference and have a fruitful conference for today. Thank you, Leo, for always being there and giving all the briefing every day. I mean every day of the conference. I think you are very helpful and a very knowledgeable person to give all the briefing about all these topics that has been presented in the conference. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rose, thank you for those warm words of welcome and encouragement and support. Please know it's a privilege to have someone of your experience and knowledge to guide our vector control working group and be active in our APMEN platforms. So for the time that you're able to share with us in your very busy schedule, please know we are very grateful for that. And it's a great privilege to have you on board. Thank you, Dr. Rose. I should also mention, we just going by the names on the participant list, there's a very strong participation by National Malaria Control Program persons, which is really good to see, because today in particular, we, as also last Wednesday, it's very important to get input and feedback from our National Malaria Control Program partners. So thank you for that. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Jenarun Jelip, who is head of the vector-borne disease sector in the Ministry of Health in Malaysia. And Dr. Jelip is going to talk to us on core practices and approaches in vector and case surveillance in Malaysia. So thank you, Dr. Jelip.
Yeah, thank you, Leo. Let me share my slide. Yeah.
Yes, it's, if you could go full screen.
Okay, full screen.
There we are. You got it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to give a talk in this conference. And I was given this topic to talk about core practices and approaches in vector and case surveillance in Malaysia. Okay. Initially, I prepared something like 40 slides, but I cut down that number to about 30 now. So this is the content of my presentation. I'm going to go quite quickly the first three topics, but I will spend some time describing the last one, which is malaria-genic potential risk specification for focal response. The malaria program in Malaysia has a long history. If you look at this graph, in the 1961 or 1960s, we had something like almost 250,000 cases of malaria a year. And it went down dramatically in the 80s. And if you look at this line, this actually is the annual parasite incidence of malaria in Malaysia. And we actually achieved below 1 per thousand population somewhere in 2003. But we only declared our intention to eliminate malaria somewhere in 2011. Yeah, so at one point of time, in fact, we were so ambitious to actually eradicate malaria, but you can see it was not successful. We entered into the malaria control phase, and in 2011, we entered into the malaria elimination phase of the program. And if you go look at this data from 2000 to 2020, we actually achieved zero indigenous human malaria in 2018 and sustained this status until now. But if you look at the number of imported cases of malaria, except for last year, we had something like around 500 cases of imported malaria every year. So probably the COVID pandemic has actually helped Malaysia a bit in that sense. Because the number of imported malaria cases last year was only about 175 cases. Along the way, this is the key milestones of the malaria program in Malaysia from 2011 to 2020. As I mentioned, Malaysia declared its intention to eliminate malaria in 2011. And in 2018, we actually achieved zero locally acquired malaria then. Along the way, we actually did at least 2 program reorientation, whereby we came up with a national strategic plan to achieve malaria elimination by 2020. The first program orientation was in 2011, and the other one was in 2016 actually. Yeah. This is the Malaysia shrinking map starting 2011 to 13, and we achieved zero in 2018, yeah, 2018, and maintained this status until now. Coming to malaria case surveillance, malaria actually is a notifiable disease under the Prevention and Control of Infectious Disease Act 1988. Yeah, so at the same time, we actually follow what has been proposed by China, which is the 137 strategy in terms of diagnosis and notification must be done within 24 hours. Case investigation and case classification to be completed within 3 days, and post-site investigation, classification, and intervention within 7 days from the notification date, and to be able to control malaria outbreak within 42 days. Yeah. So talking about a platform for malaria surveillance in Malaysia, we have a few of them. Number one, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is the infectious disease information system, or e-notification. Number two is the vector-borne disease information system, also known as eVecPro, which contains all a register of all cases in Malaysia, including malaria deaths, as well as vector control planning and monitoring, malaria outbreak management, as well as drug response surveillance system within the same system. Yeah, and the third one is which is still under development actually, is the malaria post-site information system, also known as MyPost-site, which is register. This system actually is register of all the malaria post-site in the country, and also include information on receptivity and vulnerability of malaria post-site in the country. And within the same system, we actually provide a set of prescription on what to do at a different level of receptivity and vulnerability. The fourth one, also still under development, is malaria georeference information and coordination system for malaria elimination, or known as magic.me. Basically, this system actually is a partial distribution of malaria. It contains partial distribution of malaria cases in the country, as well as a plan for risk mapping for malaria foci in the whole country. The fifth one is a web-based entomological information system, also known as MyEntomTest. And the last one is public health laboratory test result system, or TIMSA. If you can see here, at least these two systems are actually are developed with collaboration from the remote sensing, Malaysia Remote Sensing Agency, together with the Ministry of Health. This is the front page of our eVecPro. As you can see, eVecPro actually not only limited to register of malaria cases, but also it's a platform to register all the other, or many other vector-borne diseases, yeah, in the country. A bit of geospatial mapping of malaria, which is known as magic.me. This is the front page of the system. And this is an example of output from the system, yeah, which is the mapping of malaria cases in the country from 2013 to 2018. Yeah, and the work is in progress. We are trying to develop risk map for malaria foci in Malaysia. Entomological surveillance system. This is the sentinel site of Anopheles surveillance system in Malaysia. We have at least one sentinel site for Anopheles surveillance in all of the states in Malaysia. Okay, and this is the sentinel site for insecticide resistant surveillance in the country. Altogether, we have 5 so far. This is to represent different regions of the country. And these are the primary vectors of human malaria in Malaysia, with the bionomics, the detailed bionomics of each vector. This is the front page of MyEntomTest again, and this is one example of output from the system, which is showing the distribution of preliminary ecological assessment for Anopheles. The green dot is to indicate that this particular locality is suitable for Anopheles breeding, whereas red dots are unsuitable. Yeah? So this is very important in decision making for the program. This is the last part of my presentation, which is assessing malarogenic potential of malaria foci, which include measurement of receptivity and vulnerability, and combine the two to help the program in decision making with regard to specification. As everybody knows, specification is very important in trying to focus our control activities as well as equitable distribution of resources for vector control. The point here is as we approach elimination, the conventional or the usual way of doing specification all this while was actually based on the disease burden, but it may not be feasible when you reach a stage where when your number of cases reach below 2 digits. So if you had like 20 or 30 cases a year, and if you were to compute the annual parasite index, the number is going to be very small. So therefore, specification based on disease burden may not be the best way of doing specification when you are approaching elimination for a country. So therefore, there is a need for integration of data, especially with regards to epidemiological and entomological data to be integrated to form an index probably. So this is why these are the methods of specification used in the country. When we were in the control phase, we actually used disease burden as a method of specification. But later on, we move on to the WHO's foci classification, and finally we use RV index, or also known as malarogenic potential of every locality in Malaysia. And I think everybody is quite familiar with this foci classification by WHO. At one point of time, we were actually using this as a method of specification for malaria programs in the country. But later on, we move on to something else, as shown here. So in the early phase of our elimination program in Malaysia, we were using the foci classification by the WHO to do specification to justify for distribution of resources. But later on, when most of the localities in Malaysia, or most of the foci in Malaysia was actually cleared foci, at one point of time, we were left like less than 100 localities, malaria foci. Most of the localities were actually already cleared foci. Therefore, but it was a very difficult decision making then, whether to stop vector control or not in this foci. But knowing that we are in the tropic countries and we have the vectors, and at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we still report imported cases from outside the country. We decided to continue doing vector control in cleared foci, but be selective with it. That's why we actually combine the measure of receptivity and vulnerability to form an index. And we did grading of this index to high, medium, and low. And foci, cleared foci with high and medium RV index were prescribed with a set of intervention. Okay, so to measure receptivity, we actually used 9 parameters to measure receptivity. And as you can see here, most of these parameters are actually entomological parameters, yeah? Like discovery of anopheles, distance from positive breeding to household, and so on and so forth. So each of these parameters were assigned with a weighting factor. And okay, I'm so sorry, the system is a bit slow. I have a bit of technical problem here. Yeah, and this is the parameters for vulnerability index. We actually put up 10 parameters for vulnerability index with weighting factor for each one of the items. And we did grading for both vulnerability. We graded vulnerability to high, medium, and low. Similarly, with receptivity, we graded them into high, medium, and low. And we construct a metric of the two. And by the end of the day, we have grading for malariogenic potential for localities in Malaysia. We graded the malariogenic potential into high, medium, and low as well. Yeah. Yeah. So having done that, then we prescribe a set of intervention for each condition. If you look at this table, this is interventions based on foci classification and RV index or malariogenic potential. Yeah. So for active foci and residual non-active foci, we have a standard set of intervention for that. But for flat foci, we prescribe a set of intervention for high and medium. Yeah. So in this case, for high and medium flat foci, we continue with epidemiological surveillance as well as vector control, either IRS or LLIN. But at the same time, after two cycles of vector control, the decision whether to stop or not will depend on entomological risk assessment. So every 2 cycles of the vector control, after every 2 cycles, we need to do ERA or entomological risk assessment to decide whether to continue with the vector control or not. If the RV index was remain high or medium, we will continue with the vector control. Yeah, and finally, I think this is my last slide. Yeah, this is the data that we have collected so far in Malaysia. So altogether, in the whole country, we have about 600 malaria foci with high malariogenic potential and about 2,700 with medium RV. Yeah? And of this, we actually implement either IRS or ITN or LLIN for this locality. So altogether, even these are all flat foci actually, but we are still doing vector control for this foci with high RV or medium RV. So in summary, data collection should go across sectors and across borders to provide an accurate picture of the remaining burden of malaria in the country. And number 2, we need a more granular and quality data to enable data-driven decision making, especially with regards to vector control implementation. And as we approach elimination, there is a need for integration of data, especially epidemiological and entomological, in order to sustain the elimination program. Thank you.
Dr. Generan, if you can stop sharing, maybe. Thank you. There we are. So
I'm so sorry, there was a bit of technical glitches just now. It was a bit slow moving.
No. That was actually perfect. It gave people some time to digest the information. Very often when slides move too quickly, you don't have time to think about what the speaker, or at least in my case, I need a bit of time. I'm a bit slow. So Dr. Janarun, wonderful, highly informative presentation, and clearly Malaysia is right up there with a very advanced surveillance, control, elimination program with incredible experience that it can share with other national malaria control programs that APMEN would like to try and facilitate, because obviously Malaysia has a lot of experience and quality products that they've developed for data gathering, data manipulation. So that is the kind of experience and products that other programs can benefit from. So I'm worried that we may lose you. I don't want to delay question and answers to you specifically, because I'm worried that you may be pulled away for another meeting or so on, and the audience won't have the benefit of being able to pose questions to you directly. So I'm going to ask if we can spend a few minutes just inviting the audience to pose questions to you on your presentation, or more generally, questions that they'd like to direct to you. I need to explain to the audience that for technical reasons, the conference platform here is split into a panelist platform and a webinar platform. And for the panelists, and that's around about 100 slots available for that, where panelists have the individual choice whether they want to go live audio or live visual. It's their choice, and they can do so freely at any time. For the webinar audience, and that panelist audience is generally, it's almost exclusively for Ministry of Health and NMCP related participants. Again, for technical reasons, we've had to put most of the other respected participants in webinar mode, where you're automatically muted and visual is off. But if you want to pose questions, please do so by raising your hand or posing it in the chat box or Q&A. There's a team of us monitoring those questions and answers or chat box. If you'd like to ask a question yourself vocally and you're in webinar mode, just raise your hand and one of the team members will identify you and will enable you to be live. So let's go see what questions. So here's a question from Justin Wong Han Wei. I think the receptivity and vulnerability index is so invaluable in classification of malariagenicity potential of areas. May I please ask which is suitable interval of time for periodic updating of the index to account for development and changing of the landscape with time? Very good question. Do you want to try, answer that one, please, Dr. Jalip?
Yes. Ideally, we should update receptivity data annually. Yeah, but at the same time, the land use pattern in Malaysia is quite stable. You know, they don't change that much over time. So at the moment, we are targeting to update our receptivity at least 2 yearly. Yeah, because if you notice, especially with regards to measuring receptivity, it could be quite laborious. Yeah. So there was another question in the chat room asking about resources for doing all this receptivity and vulnerability measurement. Yeah. So for Malaysia, what we do actually is to maintain the malaria program in Malaysia is partially integrated. What I'm trying to say is diagnosis and treatment, for example, is fully integrated with the general health services, whereas the others like vector control, entomological surveillance remains as a vertical program. meaning to say we have teams at all levels, at the district level, at the state level, as well as at the national level. So it is actually partially integrated.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Jalip. Can I just, there are several people that are asking about where can they see the agenda. I'm going to ask one of the team members to maybe put the website in the chat box. But just for easy reference, if you go to orene.org, 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 in Google, pull up that web page. Top left on the screen, you'll see conferences. And if you click on that, there's a drop-down box and you'll see this specific conference there. And there's a daily agenda under there as well. Dr. Generin, the question was asked here by Dr. Effie Espino about integration. Very, very important question about integration of data. So I also picked up on that, and I was going to wait until later to ask the question. In at least one of your programs, you have a package there that integrates entomological and case surveillance data. But then you have multiple other programs, it seems several are still under development, that seem focused on either case surveillance data or entomological surveillance data, mapping and plotting and you know, giving the relevant data for those different kinds of surveillance. Is there a reason why you're developing independent programs for case surveillance, for entomological surveillance, rather than an integrated platform where all the data can be interrogated on one platform? Or is it just, you know, it's different service providers or different industries promoting or, you know, offering to develop particular surveillance programs? Intuitively, it makes sense to put all your data on one platform so you can compare and have all the data on one platform for joint visualization and interrogation. So that question from Dr. Effie Espino about integration of data.
First of all, I think Malaysia is unique in the sense that the program is fully funded by the Malaysian government. We don't receive any funding from outside. So therefore, a lot of time we do in-house development of systems. So that's the main reason why they are not integrated at the moment. But specifically for receptivity and vulnerability, we actually developed a system in-house integrating these two by itself, you know, especially for receptivity and vulnerability. But the future plan is to integrate all of this, which is in the pipeline, hopefully by 2024, because we are going to have our own CDC, similar to what CDC Atlanta, CDC Taiwan, and so on. Yeah, yeah. So what along that line, once that facility is up and running in 2024, one of the biggest component of that actually is the ICT component. So it's under that development project, we hope to integrate all these systems in one. Yeah.
Excellent. There's time for one more question, please, Dr. Jalip. I'm going to take this one from Michael McDonald, who asks, and clearly it's based on an admiration for the quality and standard of the surveillance platforms that you have and data analysis and so on. But it probably means there's a significant allocation of human resources to to gather all this data and to analyze this data and to take appropriate actions based on the data, the information that the data provide you. So can Dr. Jelly speak about the human resources strategies to maintain such a comprehensive system, given that you've achieved cessation of indigenous transmission of falciparum and vivax? Your Department of Health may be reluctant to maintain huge allocation of resources for malaria control or maintenance of elimination status. So how do you achieve maintaining that high level of preparedness given the realities of demands of other social needs for funding and so on?
Yeah, to start with, the Malaysian government actually is spending about, on average, 50 million US a year for the program. How we sustain this funding, actually, it depends on strong leadership at the national level, not only in terms of leadership, but also in terms of technical leadership. And to continue advocating for funding for the program through the channel provided by the government. So what is important is at the national level, we should come up with a very clear, strong, well-planned strategic plan for malaria at the national level, and continue advocating for funding from time to time based on the system provided by the government. So the other strategy was sometimes, just for your information, in Malaysia, we have 100 over entomologists. And we are not talking about medical entomologists. We are talking about in-service trained entomologists. So to me, to measure receptivity, for example, what we need probably is something I call field entomology. Field entomology. We do not really need a medical entomologist to do this. So what is important for Malaysia, probably especially when it comes to measuring receptivity, we need people on the ground. So what we do, we actually recruit them with or without background of medical entomology, and we do in-house in-service training for them. So this is very important to sustain the program actually for Malaysia. So because if we insist on hiring medical entomologists, there is no way we could achieve what we have achieved so far. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Jalib, thank you for very good responses and an excellent presentation. I think from all of us, great admiration, great respect, great admiration for the Malaysian vector-borne disease control programs in control and elimination of specifically malaria. I mean, there is the issue of Plasmodium knowlesi, but that's a separate discussion. So sincere congratulations to what you have achieved, what you're continuing to maintain, and we wish you well in your program of preventing reintroduction of falciparum and vivax transmission. So thank you. We hope you can stay on longer, because there will be a much longer general discussion session coming up fairly soon. And hopefully the audience will still be able to pose questions to you. I know there will be more questions. There are some more questions already, but we have to move on to the next speaker. So from all of us, sincere thank you, Dr. Jennerun, much appreciated. Thank you for your time. So Lucia, I see you are, if you could unmute yourself, Lucia, welcome aboard.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Lucia, all the way. Where are you? Are you in New York, Lucia?
I'm in Texas now, in the US.
You're in Texas.
1:45 a.m. now.
Yeah, so I was going to tell the audience, here's dedication for you. You're speaking all the way from Texas, 1:45 a.m. And from all of us, a genuine, sincere thank you, Lucia. We know, well, not we all know, I know that, you know, in a few hours' time, you actually need to be at the airport to fly back to Europe. And somehow you've got to try and fit in a couple of hours sleep as well. So all the more reason to express our sincere gratitude, Lucia. So let me then, without further ado, introduce you, Lucia, and to say that Lucia Fernandes Montoya works at the Global Malaria Program at WHO, Geneva. Among other tasks, Lucia is responsible for the development of guidelines and digital tools to support countries to strengthen entomological surveillance and the monitoring of vector control interventions and use this data for decision making. Lucia holds a BSc in physics, MSc in international health research, and is currently finishing a PhD on vector control and entomological surveillance. Lucia is also the author of a book on climate services for health. Lucia is going to talk to us, explain to us what this new, fairly recent WHO DHIS2 entomology tool is all about and the potential it holds for achieving precisely that we were talking with Dr. Jennerin about, and that is the need and benefits and advantages of having one platform where you can integrate entomological, case surveillance, other epidemiological data for collective, holistic, integrated interrogation, comparing apples with apples on the same platform, just making life a whole lot easier to visualize data, compare data, and help with decision making. So Lucia, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leo. And thanks for inviting me to present in this conference, in this very important event. I hope everything that I'm going to present tonight or this afternoon for you is actually relevant and useful for the countries. So I'll start sharing my screen. There we go. Are you seeing my screen now?
No.
Wait a second. Sharing screen too. Now it should be okay?
Yes, if you can go whole screen, if you don't mind.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm going to share as well the sound, make sure. Yeah, there we go.
That would help. Yeah, that's great.
We'll be watching a little video on this new DHIS2 digital tools for entomology and
That
vector
sounds
control.
exciting. I'll make sure I order some popcorn. Yeah, there you are.
Yes, get the popcorn ready. It's a short one though, very short one.
Okay,
So
we look
I'll
forward
start
to it.
giving
Thank
a bit
you.
of context to sort of explain how this presentation fits into all the discussions you've been having over the last few days. And I want to show more or less where these digital tools fit into the broader aim of making better informed decisions overall when it comes to controlling malaria. So I've got here a very simple presentation, very simple slide, showing how we first have to plan vector surveillance properly so that we can get the right data to meet decision-making needs. And I've got here a list of resources. The first one, the resource that can help you plan your vector surveillance activities and your activities to monitor vector control interventions is the UCSF entomology surveillance planning tool that you've heard about yesterday, and I believe you've been discussing that yesterday. The second step in the process of trying to make informed decisions, and I'm talking here specifically about entomology and vector control, is actually collecting good quality data. So once you've planned what kind of data you need to collect to serve your decision-making needs, then you have to make sure you collect data properly and good quality data and in line with WHO recommendations. And the third step in the process would be to make programmatic decisions. Once you've got you've planned your surveillance and vector control monitoring systems, you've collected the good quality data, you can move on making decisions. So I'm gonna focus on the step number 2, which is the collection of good quality data today, presenting some tools that WHO has been developing over the last more or less 2 years to support the collection of entomological and vector control data. I wanted to also highlight here that WHO has guidelines for malaria vector control, which is a very important reference document that summarizes all the evidence we have on different interventions and the public health value they have for malaria control. So that will be the document you want to use once you've got the data, the good quality data, to inform your decisions. So I'm going to play a little video first, just to give an introduction to the digital tools. Let me see. Let me know if you hear it properly. If not, just raise your hand or shout.
Entomological data is becoming increasingly important to guide and optimize the deployment of vector control interventions. The DHIS2 standard modules for entomology and vector control have been developed to support vector-borne disease programs to collect, interpret, and use entomological and vector control data in line with WHO recommendations. These modules help you monitor insecticide resistance, adult vector species and their densities and behaviors, vector breeding sites and larval source management, ITN distributions and IRS campaigns, and ITN bioefficacy and IRS residual efficacy. The modules can be integrated into your existing DHIS2 implementations, minimizing maintenance costs and allowing for the integration of entomological data with epidemiological data. Whether you are in the field, in the laboratory, or in an insectary, you can collect data and send it to DHIS2 using your mobile phone, tablet, or computer. In places with poor internet connection, you can collect data offline and send it later once connected to a network. Not only can you collect your own data prospectively in DHIS2, you can also collate data from partners and integrate historical data into the system. Once in DHIS2, you can review and validate the data, visualize it in automatically generated maps, graphs, and tables, and create and share thematic dashboards tailored to inform specific decisions. This free tool can help you transform entomological and vector control data into information that will help guide and optimize the deployment of vector control interventions in a timely and efficient manner. Visit our website and download the DHIS2 entomology and vector control modules today.
Okay, so that was a short introduction into the modules, and I'll be now presenting every aspect of them a bit more into detail. Do you hear the video
Thank
properly?
you. Yeah, no, it was a great video. It came across very well. So if you can go full screen again, there we go. Thanks, Lucia.
Yeah, so first I wanted to explain why we chose DHIS2 as a software system for these digital tools. And mainly we did because we saw many of the malaria endemic countries were moving towards using DHIS2 as a routine data collection system. So to collect data from health facilities on malaria cases and deaths. So we thought by using the same system, we could integrate entomological and vector control data with epidemiological data very easily. So that was the main reason for using DHIS2. And the goals of the toolkit, of this digital toolkit that I'll be presenting, as you heard in the video as well, is to collect and collate, to help countries collect and collate entomological and vector control data in a standard manner, providing near real-time data to decision makers. So it's not only about collecting it, but it's also about digesting the data and making it available for decision makers as fast as possible. The second objective was to support integrated vector surveillance. So many of the countries that are using DHIS2 and that are endemic for malaria or are trying to eliminate malaria are also facing other challenges with other vector-borne diseases like dengue, chikungunya, Zika. So we wanted to provide one platform where all of the data from all vectors could be collected. So it doesn't only serve Anopheles vectors, but it also helps collecting data on Aedes or Culex vectors. So the third one was to integrate entomology and vector control data with epidemiological data, as I mentioned. So that's why we chose DHIS2. The fourth objective was to centralize and digitize historical data in order to evaluate the historical trends, in this case, in vector composition, vector densities, or vector behaviors, or efficacy of vector control interventions, coverage of vector control interventions, quality of interventions, etc. And the final one was to ease global data reporting to WHO. We do not request a lot of data from countries every year, but we do ask countries to report data on insecticide resistance and a bit on vector control interventions. And we wanted to make that reporting process easier. So essentially what we have done is we've connected these digital tools with WHO data systems, so that once a country has implemented the tools, it's a matter of like clicking a few buttons and then they can share the data with WHO whenever they want. So just wanted to mention that all the tools are based on WHO official guidance. And I've shown here a couple of the documents in which these digital tools were based. And what are these tools? What do they offer? What do they contain? They are off-the-shelf standard data collection forms. So once you've got the tools implemented, you suddenly get data collection forms for different entomology and vector control activities that we will see later. The tools calculate automatically the core entomology and vector control indicators, like campaign coverage, like mosquito mortalities or densities or sporozoite rates, human biting rates, parity rates, etc., etc. They allow for the creation of custom visualizations. So they come with a set of dashboards and visualizations, but it is very easy to create new visualizations for informing different types of decisions that need to be taken at national level. And all of these visualizations and dashboards that are created are updated automatically real time as new data comes into the system. So the moment somebody logs into the system, the user sees the latest data on the maps, on the dashboards, on the line plots, without having to run anything, without having to click anywhere. So the main features of the tools, of these digital tools, is that they are free of charge completely. They are basically, because DHIS2 is a free tool, and we've developed everything around DHIS2, so all the tools, everything is free of charge. If a country has DHIS2 already implemented, they can be easily integrated into the DHIS2 implementation, reducing a lot the maintenance cost of a digital tool. Data can be collected offline or online. They allow for capturing coordinates, so point coordinates, or you can also draw polygons around areas where, like foci of transmission, for example. And they are multilingual. So they are available now, or most of the contents are available in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. But the tools can be easily translated into any other languages, actually, even without IT support. So these are the activities that the tools cover so far. We are trying to expand it, and we're trying to implement also new procedures as they come into our guidelines. But for now, we have, they support LLIN campaigns. So there are data collection forms and dashboards for collecting summary data or daily or even household level data during LLIN campaigns. We've got forms and dashboards and visualizations for LLIN bioefficacy. Same for IRS campaigns. Data can be collected in a summary fashion at the end of the campaign, or daily or at household or structure level during the campaign. We've got forms and visualizations for IRS residual efficacy. And on entomology, the tools support now the monitoring of insecticide resistance, and that includes intensity bioassays, synergies bioassays, and the standard discriminating concentration bioassays. Odor surveillance, and that means also aggregated data on numbers of mosquitoes collected per night, per week, per month, but also individual mosquito data if we want to track a mosquito through from the field all the way through different lab assays run with that mosquito. And finally, we've got also tools for breeding sites mapping and breeding sites monitoring. These are some of the examples of the visualizations that are now in the system, but as I mentioned, any other visualizations can be created very easily. But these are some of the ones we've got off the shelf for human biting rates, parity rates, sporozoite rates, or mosquito densities. These are some of the ones for insecticide resistance, so some maps that can show your country with like red, green, or orange points based on the status of resistance to different insecticides or insecticide classes. At the bottom, you see graphs showing the residual efficacy conducted with comb bioassays, or measured with comb bioassays over time after spraying. These are some visualizations for ITN campaigns where we can see, for example, the number of people per net achieved after, for example, an ITN mass distribution campaign, or on the right-hand side, the number of distributed nets per area. I'm using Spain because I'm Spanish and it was easy to use Spain as a demo country, although we don't have any malaria in Spain, luckily for now. So this is an example of one of the modules, because the digital tools are comprised of different modules for the different entomology or vector control activities. And this is the example of the module that allows you to collect data from individual mosquitoes. So I'm showing here a little example of how mosquitoes are collected in the field, but then they are usually taken to an insectary to run some assays on them. They may be taken to a lab for microscopic identification, and further into other labs for molecular analysis or sporozoite infection analysis, blood meal analysis, etc., etc. And so we can register a mosquito when the mosquito is collected in the field, have it in the system, going through all of these different assays, and each of these people, each of these technicians working in insectaries, labs, can enter the results of the different assays into the system very easily. So in the end, you end up with a line listing of all of the mosquitoes collected, their different sex, species, sample preservation, and all of the results of the different assays conducted on the mosquito. And this is the list of the assays that we support so far. The gene sequencing or the genetical analysis of the mosquito is still under construction, so it's not finalized, but all of the rest of the processes are already created in the module with forms and data workflows. I wanted to mention that beyond the actual DHIS2 modules, and that means beyond the data collection forms, the dashboards, the visualizations, we've developed a set of applications to support the fast implementation of these modules. As I said, the modules can be imported or installed into an existing DHIS2 instance, or they can also be imported into a new DHIS2 instance open for this purpose. So we've developed a tool to customize the modules, because we acknowledge each country has slightly different data collection needs. Some countries may want to collect some variables, some countries may want to collect some other variables. So there is always some customization involved during the implementation process. So we've got some tools for that. We've got tools to facilitate the installation, to speed up the installation of the modules. We've got tools to build capacity. So this is like training tools that appear within the DHIS2 and help the end users understand how to enter the data for all of these different entomology or vector control activities that we saw. We've got tools to integrate historical data or to import data from partners. We've got tools to integrate climate and environment data. So if you want to look at how mosquito populations fluctuate with rainfall or temperature, we can easily import temperature and rainfall data either from local stations or from global products. And finally, a tool to report data, which can help countries report data to WHO or to donors, for example, or other funding partners. So this is a little description of the tools. I won't go into it. You can read it when you get the PDF presentation. And I wanted to show you a little bit the training app, how training is provided from within DHIS2 once the modules, the entomology and vector control modules are installed. So essentially, we've got a training application that displays a welcome to training on the DHIS2 window, asking the users what kind of thing they want to perform in the DHIS2. Do they want to enter data? Do they want to visualize data? Or do they want to import or export data from the DHIS2? Once they click, for example, entering data, they'll be asked on which activity, entering data on what? On IRS residual efficacy, on insecticide resistance, on odor surveillance. So several boxes will appear here asking the user what activity they are doing. So if they click on insecticide resistance, for example, the end user will get further asked what kind of bioassay he or she is conducting. So if he or she is doing, for example, discriminating concentration bioassays, the user can click on it and go straight into a tutorial, which is going to show him step by step how to perform actions within the DHIS2 screens, the different screens. And we can see a live demo later of this tool if we have time. This is another little example of another application which helps importing data. So essentially, the application generates Excel templates mimicking the DHIS2 data entry forms. So that data can be entered through Excel. So here you can get a template for any of the data collection activities. You can select the places from where the data is collected. and then fill in the template, and then you can drag and drop it in this import section. So this is the list of activities, for example. And this is where users can drag and drop the Excel files with all of the data to be imported into the HIS2, and so that it appears on the visualizations and the dashboards. I wanted to also introduce very briefly the implementation process. So this is what we generally do with countries that are interested in implementing this tool. We first go through the modules with the countries. We see whether the standard data collection forms fit the country needs and the visualizations as well. And otherwise, we customize the modules to generate the country customized version. Then we implement them into a testing server. We do some training with key focal points, and we review the dashboards another time to see if any more visualizations are needed, more dashboards are needed, and we create them as well. And then once that training and once this is done and the dashboards are finalized, then the modules are finally moved into the, so to say, official DHIS2 instance where the data can be collected. And finally, if there is historical data in the country that needs to be digitized, we move into trying to rescue all of that data, trying to put it into in a standard format and importing that into DHIS2. And on the right-hand side, you see like the different customized versions we've been creating with different countries: Ghana, Mozambique, the Gambia, Madagascar. We've got countries in Africa, in the Caribbean, in South America, and in Asia now implementing the modules. So just wanted to mention that we've been working, especially over the last few months, with a few partners that have contributed modules. They have contributed data collection forms or even visualizations to enhance the number of activities supported by the modules. So on one side, we've got Vector Link, PMI, who has contributed metadata or data collection forms for IRS campaigns to collect data daily and from a structure to structure. And they have also collaborated on the entomology module for collecting individual mosquito data. PSI, who has contributed data collection forms and visualizations for ITN campaigns. And they are supporting countries to monitor continuous distributions of pet nets. And finally, Clinton Health Initiative, who has been helping countries to actually implement the modules and do trainings, build capacity in country. Here we've got, you've got some links of information pages to get more information on the modules, a link to the video that you just saw before, to a live demo, which may be down now because we are updating a few things, but it should be normally up for you to go and browse it and see it. And links to the configuration files, which are basically the things you have to install into the HIS2 for all of these data collection forms and dashboards to show up in the system. And my contact details in case you need some support, any help, you want more information. And finally, a final slide to remind all of you that the main goal is to move towards better informed and actually real-time or timely made decisions by getting all the data, digest the data, showing it in a friendly way to decision makers and help them use entomology and vector control data better to make malaria control decisions. So that's the end of my presentation. Not sure how much time we have. I've got some links here to the training application in case you want to see it live. I've got also open the information page for you to see where you can get information on the modules, where you can get the files to install the modules, the access to the demo platform, and then explanations, and for some of the applications, even videos, tutorials, yeah, some description, if I can open it, for the different applications that I've mentioned that are developed to support the implementation of the modules. I think that's it. I don't know, Leo, if we've got more time to go into more details, or we prefer to open the floor for discussions.
Yeah, Lucia, that's an amazing presentation, a huge amount to digest there. So a little bit of information overload almost. But if if you can spend 5 minutes or so, if there's anything you think might be of particular interest or value, maybe show us a bit more, 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I can show probably the training application is quite an important thing to see, because one of the challenges when any user uses a new digital system is, where do I click? Where do I go? What are the options? What is the menu? How do I get around it? And we saw countries at the beginning, the few first countries that were trying to implement the modules, struggling with understanding how to use DHIS2, not the modules, but the actual DHIS2 system. So we went on and developed this training app that you are seeing on my screen now, which is installed within DHIS2. So it's an actual additional application in the DHIS2 standard menu that is always available for a user to start it, to open it, in case they've forgotten after a few months the training they got, and they need to review or refresh their knowledge. It's always available in DHIS2. And as I was mentioning, it asks you like, what do you want to learn in DHIS2? So you can click on something, and it asks you what kind of activity are you working on? So is it insecticide resistance, in the residual spraying, IT and mass distribution, or you can also get some generic training. And this is more thought for people who need to learn more, or they need to learn DHIS2 for other diseases, for epidemiological data. They can just go and learn how to use the different sections or applications of DHIS2. But we've got here some specific tutorials for entomology and vector control. So for example, insecticide resistance, and we can click on the type of bioassay. The user can click on the type of bioassay they are doing. So discriminating concentration, intensity concentration, synergist, and they go into a tutorial that pops out on the right-hand side of the screen with different steps. And sorry, I was taking the tutorial myself already before. So they will be guided through the DHIS2 by these little GIFs that they see here with a little video on where they have to click to look, in this case, for example, for the Sentinel site. And they've got some instructions around here on how to do that. And then so they can move along the steps. I'm sorry, because this DHIS2 is a sort of like working instance of DHIS2. So usually a user will see here the screen of DHIS2, which is the same as the screen they see in these little GIFs. And they can understand where to click, where to go to do the different, to fulfill the different steps of the data entry process, which is to select Sentinel site, to select a data collection form. Next step, sorry, because it's like a demo instance that we are still working on, this other one. Let me refresh this page. Right, there we go, sorry. My computer is also like, okay. So if I go into the training app, exit tutorial. Yeah, you may need to wait for us to put this into the official demo.
That's okay.
But essentially, so that will be an option within the DHIS2, which is the training app. And then users will generally see the screen that you're seeing at the background with the actions that they have to complete, but it doesn't work right now. Sorry, sorry for that.
No,
and once they
no
complete the
problem.
tutorial, they can just they are congratulated for completing the tutorial, and they can go and take another different tutorial to learn a different data collection process, or a different, or for example, to learn how to visualize the data, creating a bar plot, a line plot, a map, or any other type of visualization they need. Not sure if I should give more details on some of the applications that I mentioned, maybe, or more details on any of the...
I don't see specific requests for that, Lucia. I think, you know, you've given us a good peep through the window as to what this platform, this package, you know, the scope of what it can embrace, and it is still growing. You are still adding on modules or elements to it. So, I mean, I find this hugely exciting, and I want to thank you for your time, Lucia. So there are multiple people that are asking, here's another one, excellent presentation, Dr. Lucia. So, I mean, the comments are coming through. People are appreciating what you've presented, and they want to know more. They want to know the websites where they can access. They're asking, can we put on in the chat box your contact details, which is what I did originally, to be able to reach you to ask you to give this presentation today. So there's a lot of interest out there, Lucia. Excellent presentation. Thank you for that. So I'm going to use a bit of moderator's discretion here and say this to our audience. Let's do away with a formal tea break. If you want to have a tea break, please take it at, please do so whenever it suits you best. But we have Lucia available not for much longer. Lucia has to leave and go and get some sleep before she flies off in a very few hours' time back to Europe. So let's use this time when Lucia is available to pose questions to her, should you have any. And I've also, done away with, for various reasons, some facilitators had to drop out. So we'll keep this in plenary mode so that everybody has access to Lucia, and not just, one breakaway group has access to Lucia and Dr. Jenorin. So let's keep this in plenary mode. Those people who on the panelist facility, they can just speak live, ask questions. Those of you, or maybe let's just say, anybody who wants to ask a question, raise your hand, and one of our technical team will identify you and ask you to pose your question verbally. If you prefer not to pose your question verbally, then by all means, put it in the chat box, and hopefully we will find it and present it to our, well, to anybody in the audience that's capable of answering it, for that matter. I have asked Lucia and Dr. Bill Hawley if they'd mind making themselves available for a period of time to help co-moderate this session. So Lucia is going to be available for a few minutes. Dr. Bill Hawley is also available to take questions or direct questions, etc. But he too has to leave for another meeting that he's committed to. So I've also asked Dr. APMEN, because I understand that Lucia has interacted to some extent with Myanmar in exploring introducing this tool, DHIS2 ENTO, to Myanmar, but it hasn't gone very far. So maybe later on, Dr. APMEN can tell us a bit what they've done so far. Before we go into questions and answers, I want to ask this as a general statement rather than question. It's a request more than anything else. So last week, Wednesday, Elodie Vajda explained to us that UCSF entomological surveillance planning tool, which hopefully you will have seen and agree that it's a state-of-the-art data gathering, entomological data gathering tool that covers basically the full scope of what an NCP entomologist should be gathering, and it tells you what data you should be gathering, how you should be gathering it, how you should be storing it, how you should be interpreting it, it's how you should be analyzing it, all those kinds of stuff. So there you have a state-of-the-art, excellent surveillance, planning, guiding, support tool. What Lucia has been describing here is similarly a top quality platform for taking that data and putting it in a platform where you can integrate multiple layers of different kinds of data, whether it be entomological, case surveillance, environmental, climate data, etc. You can put it all into this platform and enable the platform to manipulate that data and analyze and present it to you, visualize it to you in whatever way you really want to. So for me, this is just my humble opinion. We have two opportunities here. That UCSF entomological surveillance planning tool, an excellent way to go about gathering your entomological data. And then this platform for bringing all that data together with other relevant data to help with decision making. So, I mean, Malaysia walked a different route. They had the resources to develop their own tools and so on. Here, WHO and UCSF have given us a shortcut. Here, guys, on a plate, here are two excellent tools to have a full package where you can have state-of-the-art technology and methodology available to help you with your malaria control program. And the beauty of it is it's also designed for that fine granularity that we need when we reach elimination stage. You know, it enables you to drill down for local epidemiological interrogation of situations. Why do you have outbreaks in a particular area? To go and analyze the contributing factors resulting in residual malaria in outbreaks and so on. So my plea is this, my request, if there are nations, if there are national malaria control programs that are interested in exploring, adopting either one or both the UCSF ESPT tool or the WHO DHIS2 tool, excuse me, ideally both. If there's an NMC program interested in exploring, trying this out, let's try it out in a few districts or in a specific geography and see how it works. And if we like it, then we'll roll it out across bigger areas. You know, if you'd like to try it out, APMEN would like to try and support you. Send me an email and I will, you know, contact you and we can try and put together. Lucia has very kindly expressed willingness to help. I mean, the package already has detailed guidelines, but if you're anything like me, you know, I'll try it out and within the first minute, I'll lose all sense. I need somebody to hold my hand and help me understand what I must do to use this program. Lucia has expressed willingness to do just that. UCSF is willing to help with the surveillance planning tool. So, you know, if there's a country that is interested in exploring, adopting, and piloting these tools, let us know, and then maybe we can try and put together a small team with WHO and UCSF and APMEN and whoever to try it out in your particular country. Let's see if we can do that. So I spoke far too much now. Let's go to questions and answers. Tin, are there any hands up? So there was a question earlier on, a question from Jeffrey He that I picked up. Lucia, where Jeffrey is asking, aside from the different modules that WHO is still in the process of development, are there plans to develop a community engagement or human behavior aspects element that can tell you something about the human behavior aspects, let's say percentage of people going on, into forests, or people outdoors at a particular time of evening, that kind of, the human behavior elements. Any plans for that, Lucia?
Yeah, very, very good question. So, I mean, one of the beauties of DHIS2 is that developing any new data collection form is very, very easy. So just as an example, when the COVID pandemic started and countries needed to collect data on COVID right away, as fast as possible, and report data back to the WHO, etc., many went into developing data collection forms within DHIS2 and start collecting COVID data in there. So just to say that developing the forms, the visualizations, the dashboards for a new activity that is maybe not part of the routine activities is quite easy. So we are not yet now planning on developing anything for human behavior, because we are now working on introducing the insecticide resistance monitoring for pyriproxyfen and new chemicals that require slightly different processes of the standard WHO tube test or CDC bottle bioassays. So we are now going to be working on that for the next few months. But if a country wants to collect that data, in that process of customizing the tool to the country needs, those forms can be developed and tested, and the visualizations developed to support the interpretation of the data on human behavior. Or mosquito behavior is already there, so it's only human behavior that will be missing.
Excellent. Thank you for pointing that out, Lucia. Very good point. So, programs don't have to wait for WHO to come up with particular forms. If you have an existing form, it's relatively easy to adapt, or to get the system to accommodate your particular way of gathering data or the data sets, and get the two to talk to each other, your particular data form and the DHIS2 platform. You get the IT people and they get the two to talk to each other, and present the data in whatever way is best, most convenient for you. So thank you for that, Lucia. I'm going to ask our technical team if you could enable Jeffrey He to go live and ask respond to a question. And the question was, thank you for your response. Currently, I am involved in vector control. How is outdoor residual spraying being carried out using a long-lasting formulation of insecticide? So Jeffrey has offered to answer that question about how's outdoor residual spraying being carried out? Will somebody just enable Jeffrey to speak?
Jeffrey is already on panelist, so he can unmute himself.
So just unmute yourself, please, Jeffrey.
Hi, and the question is, how is outdoor residual spraying being conducted? And it's very clear that the WHO guidelines do not say these things very clearly, and programs are faced with what to do with the direction or the target of residual spray. Should it be done in outdoor vegetation, as was tried by the Burnett Institute, I believe, in Myanmar? So there's one extreme example. Sorry, it's not Burnett Institute, it was a Shocklaw Malaria Research Center in Myanmar. So that's an extreme example of outdoor vegetation, and one wonders whether the environmental effects on the vegetation, on the fauna, and the things along the food chain will be affected, given that the timing of the spraying may be done in outside the dry season or after the dry season. So, but there is in the early days of DDT residual spraying, countries were already put in under the guidelines of the eradication veterans or leaders. Countries were already spraying programs are already put in residual sprays under the shelters, dwellings, where the vectors tend to raise and where those floorboards are perforated or are incompletely covered. There was an opportunity for vectors to enter to the bedrooms and living spaces. And the programs were also put in spraying residues on the awnings, on the eaves, and outdoor walls. And in particular, in the Pacific islands, there were outdoor kitchens, house wind. House wind is defined as places without any walls where people tend to gather, rest, and entertain themselves. There were outdoor kitchens where people cook outdoors without many wall surfaces, and therefore the ceilings, the thatch ceilings, and the timber boards, and places like that were sprayed. So, and recently, and I could pass this over to the IMAR team, to Dr. Jinarum and his IMAR team, that they did spray outdoor places for control of P. knowlesi in Malaysia. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Very practical guidance there. So like you, I'm also, if I may express my opinion, I'm also a bit hesitant and reluctant and don't like general application of those insecticides to vegetation because of the secondary effect on good insects. Many of them important for pollination and play a very important role in maintaining food webs and so on. So, but you know, for more specifically targeted reach to vector mosquitoes, as you point out, there are, you know, certain places you can concentrate. For me, one place that should definitely be targeted is, and it's very common in the Greater Mekong sub-region, many people, you know, in their stilt houses, they keep cattle under the house, or they have separate shelters where the cattle are kept. And cattle are powerful attractants of mosquitoes, including many of the malaria vector mosquitoes. So they genuinely attract large numbers of mosquitoes, including vectors. So certainly any shelters holding cattle should definitely be considered for spraying as well, the wall surfaces.
Hi, Leo. We have one participants from the webinar who wish to ask a question.
All right, please go live.
Dr. Sunata Kumar Ghosh, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, Dr. Ghosh, welcome. While we're waiting for Dr. Ghosh, there's a question here from Dr. Prudence. We'll catch up with you in a moment, Dr. Ghosh.
Yeah.
Here's a question here from Dr. Prudence Hamade. Will the DHIS2 database be able to define the RV data that was referred to by Dr. Jenarun, as was done in Malaysia, which is essential for prevention of reintroduction? And I suppose, you know, that's a case of, you know, as long as you present the data in an appropriate way, that should easily be able to be captured on DHIS2, Lucia. How do you respond?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question, and it's linked to another question that I see on the Q&A regarding the creation of new variables. They're very related. So DHIS2 allows you to create custom indicators. So once you've got raw data in the system, you can apply some calculations to that raw data to get an indicator calculated. So as long as the functions available in DHIS2 support the calculations needed for the RB indicators presented by Malaysia, then those can be automatically calculated by the system and displayed in dashboards or in tables to score, for example, the, I guess, prevention and reintroduction risk for different areas of the country. So the only limitation is that DHIS2 is not a full-blown calculator, so it doesn't calculate any function, any mathematical function, but it does allow for the calculation of most of the basic mathematical functions. So yeah, it's fully flexible on the number of indicators that you want to build. Countries can build as many as they want, and so all of them, or just a subset on dashboards, tables, maps, etc. So I do believe, I mean, it will be a matter of trying it out, but I do believe it will support the generation of those indicators for reintroduction.
Yeah, thank you, Lucia. Dr. Susanta Ghosh.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Leo. My question, Dr. Lucia, is that how organic this DHIS tool? Means we have developed another device. It is already published in Malaria Journal, and Dr. Leo, I have shared that paper. There we can do the surveillance on the real time, and offline, online can be done, and also vector control activities, action taken is also been done, and community engagement also. All this processing can be done with this device. If you want, I can share with that particular paper. You can go through it, and it is very organic process, real-time data generation, and then you can have on the Google Map, the hotspots are created immediately, and you can take action immediately. Like the patient is detected, then within 13714 model, and in case of VIVAX, you can also tap down whether the patient is taking everyday primaquine or not. Immediately that vector control team is alerted within the system, and vector control team immediately goes there and they do the vector control activity with the help of the people. This much of system is now there in place and working in India in Mangalore city. If you wish, I can share more on this particular device. It is very helpful. You can catch the worker once the case is once the worker goes device and it has been given to the stakeholders, the local diagnostic team, the hospital, and the local administration. The district health department health, you also can monitor at the end of the day what activities the entire team has been done at the end of the day. If somebody not done, they can explain why it is not done. So we cannot escape, the workers cannot escape from this mechanism. It's a beautiful device, handheld device, and geotagged also. If you wish more on this, I can share that particular article.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ghosh. By all means, please, please send us that information. I know exactly which paper you're referring to. Lucia, I don't know if you want to respond.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I would love also to receive the paper and read through it, because I'm sure we can learn a whole lot from that system. Just on a few notes on the DHIS2, it also has the capacity to send notifications within the system. So it has communication tools so that users of the system, and that means the actual people collecting the data or their supervisors, can communicate. So it also triggers notifications automatically, for example, when certain types of, cases are detected or cases of a certain species are detected. It can trigger alarms, and people who need to respond to that receive the messages saying this happened in this area, please go and take an action. And in a sense, you can also nowadays, although that is a functionality that we haven't looked into so much yet, but you can assign tasks. So there are certain types of data collection forms where you can create teams and assign what team or what person has to collect data from which site, for example, or from which population group or area or whatever you want. So it allows you to distribute work to some extent, and it has a lot of communication capacities within the system. But I'd love to receive the paper and read through it, because I'm sure we can also improve the system based on on your experiences.
Yeah, thank you for that response. Yeah, so Dr. Ghosh, please do send us those details. We'll put it up on the website and also forward it to Lucia. So thank you for making us aware of that paper once again. At the end of the day, I suspect it's the power of the marketplace. You know, people, different groups of people are going to use different products. And, you know, in the long run, the product that is more popular will win out. So, you know, one has to give each one opportunity to be tried out and see which one works best for maybe different user groups. So I see here there's Dr. Kalpana Barua. I think you have a question for Dr. Lucia. For Lucia, Dr. Kalpana, I think you're...
Thank you.
There we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Leo. Dr. Lucia, this is an excellent presentation on the toolkit, very detailed one. I think that the self-learning, the tutorial part, it will be very useful. I want to ask you one thing. In your first slide, you have shown that 30 countries and in India, 22 states, they are using DHIS2, isn't it?
Yeah. So the map that I displayed, I'll just show it quickly.
Yeah, but
again.
I'm from India. I'm from India, but is it? Yeah, this one. What you have shown? It is malaria or for any other data?
For any other data. So this is a website that the DHIS2 developers. So this is a team of people in Oslo who are developing the core DHIS2 system. They maintain a website where they provide information on which countries have implemented DHIS2 for any disease as a health information system. So it doesn't really mean it's specifically malaria, it could be any other disease.
Yeah, for malaria, it was not successful in India. We tried in 2 states, Odisha and Himachal Pradesh, but it was not successful. So that's why I wonder whether it will be for this entomological data, if it is not, not good for this malaria metric indices, then for entomology, whether the states will find it comfortable or not. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it depends on when it was tested, because DHIS2 has been rapidly developing, and they are, I think, now releasing a new version every 6 months. So a lot of like the bottlenecks and the lacking functionality that the system or the challenges the system was facing a few years ago are now solved. So there was attempts to implement DHIS2 in some countries in the old days. Countries found limitations, couldn't implement it, but nowadays, as you see a bit here on the, of course, this is their website. I don't have a lot of information on this, but as you see on the little time plot here, there's an increasing amount of countries that are finally implementing the system. So I guess this increase is because of that increasing functionality over time and some of the challenges being overcome by the new versions. I'm not sure really so you've got some information on where it is being used for the COVID surveillance, vaccines, where the tracker functionality is being used, the Android apps, some of the standard WHO packages, which include, are kind of the same thing that I am presenting for entomology, but for HIV, for immunization, for TB, for malaria epidemiology. So you do get some information on the different uses of DHIS2, but it's not, it's not super detailed, but you can get a sense of who is using DHIS2 for what.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. Thank you, Lucia. So apparently Riatni Lilis raised a hand. Are there, Riatni, do you still want to pose a question maybe? Are there any other hands up, Tin?
Yes, Riatni, would you like to ask a question? If not, we can go to Sutrisno.
So whoever would like to ask a question, if you're enabled, please just go right ahead and ask the question. Make yourself live and ask the question. Or if you're not enabled and can't do it, just raise your hand, and then somebody, Tin probably, will pick you up and make you live. I'm also acutely aware that Lucia needs to get some sleep time. So let's say
Leo, there is one question. Sorry, I'm seeing one question that we didn't answer from Dr. Pradeep Srivastava.
Yes, okay. If you want to go ahead and answer that one, I actually saw that one. Thanks for bringing me back to it. Yeah, okay.
I was scrolling through the chat to see if anybody had any more questions.
Yeah.
And I see
Thank
he's
you.
asking, he's saying that the parameters on entomology included in DHIS2 are the ones which are based on collected mosquitoes and tests performed in the lab. But that what is required is to conduct studies in the field, like biting behavior, resting behavior, etc. So just wanted to mention on that one that we do have the capacity to measure biting behavior hourly over the night and outdoor and indoor. And the same thing for resting, but more like on the outdoor and indoor side of things, not only hourly resting mosquitoes collected. So there is quite some capacity already to do these kind of studies, which are a bit more advanced than the regular surveillance of densities and sporozoite rates. So we've got even some graphs, not sure if I had any screenshots, but some graphs showing the percentage of mosquitoes collected in different times of the night of different species. So those visualizations are also available within the system already.
Wonderful.
I'm thankful, Lucia. Thank you very much. I was expecting this question, because this is a very important question for controlling outdoor transmission and using this DHIS2 platform, because earlier WHO has used other insecticide resistance monitoring maps when other people were there. Now they are not there. So that is why using this DHIS2, it will be more helpful if more parameters are included, which are actually related to control measures. Because many years I've been heading the department in National Program for Vector Control and Entomology. Many years we have been working only on insecticide resistance monitoring data. We have not included any software, any program related to density fluctuation and biting and resting behaviors. Thank you for picking that question.
You're welcome.
Thank you for asking the question, Dr. Pradeep. So, I get the impression it's a very flexible system. It's really up to the user to, if you have a particular data collection form that is important to you to capture specific data, it's a fairly flexible system that you can adapt to incorporate those data that you want to collect. So it's a tool in progress. It's evolving, growing, getting better, stronger all the time. And it's up to the user community to improve it. So it just seems like an ideal opportunity to do just that.
That's a very important point, Leo, because like most of the things that you see now in the tool were developed because countries started developing the tool and they say, wait, I do also need this form that is not in the tool. Will you please develop the form?
Excellent.
So we've been responding to country needs and incorporating those forms as standard forms. And so the tool keeps growing and growing and growing in the number of activities it supports and the number of visualizations you've got. So we'll be more than happy to continue doing the same with countries in Asia Pacific, developing new forms for human behavior or any other activity that is not now present in the tool.
So Lucia, can I ask you straight out, I stuck my neck out a little bit, but I think you did make that offer fairly recently. If there are countries that are interested in exploring, adopting, and piloting this tool, would you be willing to, to provide some guidance and support and hold hands a bit and help such countries?
Absolutely. We are doing that already in Venezuela, in Bhutan, in Madagascar, in Mozambique, in Ghana, in Kenya. So we're very happy to work with the countries and see what kind of extra things they need, develop it for them, help them with implementation, training, although it has to be online for now with the COVID pandemic, but some online training as well.
And absolutely. So it would be, for now, COVID realities, online support, identifying time slots that suits everybody, and then having getting together a group of NMCP people, end users, getting yourself, and if they're interested in also using the UCSF ESPT tool, Emily Vajda or Emily Dancer or Elodie Vajda or Neil Lobo, get a bunch of people together that can try it out. So I think it's an ideal opportunity, and there's great willingness by people knowledgeable in those particular tools to help and assist.
Absolutely.
So Lucia, can I say, because I think there are a lot of comments coming through, but not specific questions so much. So I'm going to say 3 more minutes that Lucia is going to make herself available. So if you have specific questions for Lucia, please direct them in the next 3 minutes, because I think then we should let Lucia go to try and get some sleep. Yeah. So Lucia, just in case there are no questions and you disappear quietly, let me, on behalf of our audience and everyone here, say genuine, sincere thanks for an exciting presentation on a wonderful tool that I have little doubt there will be expressions of interest. So from all of us, thank you for still being available at 3 a.m. or whatever it is there now.
Yeah, almost 3. Yeah. So thanks to all of you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of you again, maybe in these smaller group conversations around the tool, around the capacities, around country needs. Very happy to support any country who is interested. I'm fully available. You've got my email, you've got all the means to contact me if you want.
Wonderful.
So please do not
Wonderful.
hesitate to ask for information or support.
Thank you, Lucia. So you've got 2 minutes left of Lucia's time. If you want to ask her a question, raise your hand. 2 minutes. So while we're waiting, I'm going to ask our National Area Control Program managers. Tin, interrupt me if you see a hand coming up. Please stop me so we can allow that person to ask Lucia before she disappears. But while we're waiting, I'm going to ask our National Area Control Program managers and entomologists in the audience to provide some confirmation. I'm sticking my neck out here, but it's a question that relates to where the core competence must be ensured within field entomology staff. So, and therefore, what the real fundamental training needs for, Dr. Generan said, they don't necessarily employ medical entomologists because there are no medical entomologists to employ. There's just not enough medical entomologists going around globally to be employed. So you have to do on-the-job training of field assistants to get them to do particular jobs. So what are the core things you need to train a non-entomologist to do? So I'm going to stick my neck out and say, the single most important thing an entomologist in an NMC program must be able to do is to keep on top of insecticide susceptibility status. Is that correct? So don't answer me yet. So you need to know how to do the assays. And then there's also a need for, a couple of other entomologists or staff on the program to have sufficient depth of understanding and broad knowledge to know how to respond and come up with an insecticide resistance management plan. That's a step up from just being able to do the assays and determine whether there is insecticide resistance developing in focal areas. So that's step one. That's one core competency that field entomologist or entomologist must have. So then secondly, you need to know about vector sampling techniques and how to identify the mosquitoes you catch, because that is where many of the other key indicators come in. such as species composition, abundance, vector behavior, etc., human biting rates. All those other things flow out from that. So there are these three things that an NMCP entomologist must be able to do. And that is insecticide resistance monitoring, Anopheles collections, and Anopheles identifications. Am I right or am I wrong? Because this relates to fundamental training needs. These are the things those entomologists must know and must be well qualified to do. Anybody want to comment on that maybe?
Leo?
Sure,
Leo?
Dr. Rose.
Yeah. I would like to share our experience in Malaysia. So for us, of course, it is not easy to find a medical entomologist. Or so what we did was we had a job scope for entomologists in our program, and once they enter in the program, they're being hired in our program by our Ministry of Health. They have to join the diploma in applied parasitology and entomology. So this course it took 6 months. It takes 6 months for them to complete the course. And then in this course, they learn about what you have mentioned just now. So what I'm trying to say that even they are not graduated as a medical entomologist, but there must be a structured course that they need to attend so that they have all the skill. I think for the country, they can identify which universities or which institute that can provide the structured course for entomology. So this is how we apply in Malaysia. So it doesn't mean that they have to graduate as a medical entomologist, but we equip them with the skill and knowledge once they enter into the program by attending this 6-month course. And they have a proper lecture, proper practical, and also exam at the end of the course. This is to evaluate their skill and knowledge.
Thank you for that background and information, Dr. Rose. Very helpful. And once again, it shows the very high level at which Malaysia operates. I suspect, relevant in Africa, but it may even apply in Asia Pacific as well, where some countries, may not have the financial resources to send somebody away for 6 months to a university in Malaysia or Bangkok or wherever to attend a course there. Or let that person go for 6 months, but if most programs will be willing to let a person go for 2 or 3 weeks, especially if such a training course is offered in country, in their particular country. So I'm trying to understand what are the fundamental basic core needs that an NMCP program needs their entomology staff to do. So I fully agree with you. You don't need a 3-year medical entomologist to perform some of the basic functions, and 6 months should provide a very good platform of knowledge and understanding. But some countries don't even have that. So where do we start with our training? That was my point of departure, really. Thank you, Dr. Rose. Yeah.
One more, Leo. I think like what you have mentioned, I think in the country, they can identify which are university that can help the program manager.
Yep.
And they can collaborate with this university. The other thing is, I think, to find the nearest country to the nearest country. For example, for Asia country in the Asia, so that this will save costs in terms of supporting the participant to have to go for at least 3 weeks or 1 month course, because you need to support their logistic, their foods, their cost, that you must incur some budget for this cost. So I think it's more cost effective if you find the nearest to their origin country, then where they can get the cost. The other thing is maybe APMEN and APALMA could identify which are these countries that can provide cost, and so that the other country can come and attach, for example, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But in terms of cost, that need to be discussed with the country themselves and also with APALMA and APMEN.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. Very excellent guidance there. So any particular questions? Tim, do you pick up any questions?
We have one arms up from Dr. Aris Sharma.
Okay, please.
So this is, there are 3 things. One is the availability of entomologists in a particular country. 1. 2, non-availability of entomologists in a particular country or a Southeast Asian region. Number 3, capacity building. And last one is capacity building. So now suppose the availability of this entomologists are not available with this any country. Number, suppose that is available also, maybe available also, like Dr. Rose just said, other than medical entomologists. I have what my thinking is like that. If you are giving some training capacity building for a biological students or non-biological students, so in 1 month it is very difficult to understand a wings of more than 60-100 species of anophelines. So it is not easy to identify a mosquito morphological or anatomical features. Number 2, other parameters also. So in 1 month, how we can how a non-biological students or other than medical entomology students can become an entomologist under National Malaria Control Program. This is a very big issue. Otherwise, what will happen? I tell you what will happen. Happen is like that in a particular state, he is collecting the mosquitoes and he is saying that mosquito is Anopheles crucifixus. And after identification, morphological, molecular, species was other than Anopheles crucifixus. So particularly I am talking about vectors. So you have to identify vectors, that may be any person. So capacity building is must in our whole region, Asian, Southeast Asian region. And what is the practice at present, like India? Previously, there was a regular training for this entomologist, biologist, and other people's malariology, malaria entomology, advanced medical entomology. Now this training is, nobody is doing any training. So my request to this APMEN, they should some regional capacity building center, regional training center for all these countries who are falls under this APMEN. So this is the one suggestion for APMEN. When we are talking about capacity building or availability of the entomologist, so some countries are not recruiting any entomologist. Now I am talking about my own country. National Malaria Eradication Program started 1960s in our country. After that, so many entomologists were available with the country, with the program. Now at national headquarters, National Vector Borne Disease Control Program headquarters, no regular entomologist is available. Only Kalpana Barua is there, and she has also working after its supervision. So now first is availability. Number 2, how we will train them. Number 3, availability of training center in particular Southeast Asian regions or other regions under APMEN. So this is my request. We have to start from if you are talking about malaria elimination. Or if you are talking about other elimination of like pyrolysis, elimination of viscerous salmonellosis. So this insect collector is not collecting mosquito no only for malaria. He is going for other vectors also. So this is a training for particularly one disease, training for other disease also, like Kala-Jar vector, like filariasis vector. The program is National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. So my submission is that APMEN should start a regional providing some facilities to these countries, member countries who are falls under APMEN. So they can identify a center with good capability and capacity of entomologists, and they can also support the countries with like guidance, particularly availability of entomologists infrastructure in a particular country. So this is my submission, Dr. Lee.
And an excellent, it's an excellent submission, Dr. Sharma. Thank you for sharing that. Lots and lots of food for thought there. Wonderful observations you made there. Thank you for that. So I mean, there are a good number of things, and we will unpack that and definitely discuss this. So already, I mean, we raised this issue last Wednesday when we had a particular working group or breakaway session to try and identify skills within Asia Pacific. You know, who has particular skills in particular elements of vector surveillance? Individuals that have particular skills that can be deployed for training at particular training centers. And that was the second part of the question. Where are these institutions that could be developed into centers of excellence or as regional centers of training for example, vector surveillance, malaria vector surveillance, or, you know, increasingly, we should start thinking beyond malaria, not just malaria, but also arbovirus vectors and so on, because, you know, the sampling techniques, okay, they're not exactly the same, but very similar in some cases. But the you know, the tools for identification and many of the tools are overlapping in the approaches and so on. So, you know, so identifying these institutions that have lab facilities, dissecting microscopes, have a field station where you can do field collections and train people in doing that. So, you know, we started along that road of trying to identify who has the skills and where are the institutions that could perhaps be designated as regional training facility or centers. And I like your distinction, if I understood you correctly. It's not just individuals that need capacity building and training to be more effective in vector surveillance. It's actually lending support from those particular institutions that have the capacity. Institute for Medical Research that Dr. Rose was referring to, where those skills can be passed to other institutions. So, you know, you have institutional capacity building as well. So that's a one level up from individual training. So Dr. Sharma well pointed out, we appreciate you raising those elements. And point taken, we will work on that. So Tim, do you see any other hands up?
Nope, not at the moment.
So here's a question here from Southern Africa, William Gulube. That problem is real here in Southern Africa where I'm based, and to address such a regional body, SADC Elimination 8 organized an entomological fellowship program to orient National Malaria Control Program members on basic practical skills and knowledge. I benefited from such an environmental health practitioner and currently coordinating entomological activities in the country. Correct, Willie. You know, these are programs that everybody should be encouraged to undertake, like APMEN did so in 2019, where with very limited funding, it supported a group of entomologists selected from across Asia Pacific to go to Kuala Lumpur for 6 months of training in that diploma in applied parasitology and entomology. So training, there are different levels of training. You know, you can do a 2-week training course, you can do a 6-month training course, and you can do a 3-year training course. So it's a question of trying to identify what are the greatest needs and where do you need to patch and fill and support, and try and spread that need, you know, so you get broad coverage across that spectrum. So, you know, we'd like to improve our understanding where those critical needs are to try and help. And it was last week, Wednesday, and again today, and in other sessions that we're starting to understand better. And earlier work done by Jeffrey He and Tiff when they were running the vector control working group. Critical understanding, but and then also the surveys done by Tom Burkott and Tanya Russell. It all paints a picture that helps us understand where support is required. But it also changes over time. So you can't just do it once, you have to repeat it. And that's what Tom was hinting at, that maybe it's time later on this year to do a full comprehensive survey again. And we'll support Tom in doing that. I see Tom is actually part of the audience now. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to start asking questions as well. So one question I have here is, I understand there was a group dedicated to outdoor biting some years ago. Something tells me it might have been hosted at Kasetsart University. But that group devoted to outdoor biting issues, that seems to have faded away. Did that group exist? Is that correct? Has it faded away? And is there merit in resuscitating such a focused target group on such an important issue? I mean, the whole malaria endemic world is faced with this issue of increasing outdoor transmission of malaria, and it causes residual malaria in the elimination phase that's extremely difficult to address. And it needs multiple minds to be applied to try and find solutions to grapple with this outdoor transmission aspect. So, you know, I'm just putting it out there. Is there merit? What do you think? Is there merit in resuscitating this group? Maybe we should hold a webinar on that. Here's another question, maybe not provocative, but worth asking. There has been some interest expressed a few times for GIS training in entomological capacity building. So I'd like to test this on you as the audience, please. Do you think GIS is an aspect that could do with some training? I guess that GIS is already strong within the general National Malaria Control Program for mapping of malaria cases, etc. So is there a particular need in entomology, such as for mapping pockets of insecticide resistance or the results of insecticide resistance monitoring? Or would it be more practical and easier for an entomologist simply to hand the data to the general IT specialist in the National Malaria Control Program? Is it overkill to train an entomologist to do GIS. My suspicion is, you know, everybody asks for a GIS course, you train, you bring in expertise and you train entomologists to do GIS, but they actually never do it. So what's the point? If there is a GIS specialist in the NMCP that does that job anyway, and they can just take the, so my question is there genuinely a need for GIS training within entomologists? I see 0 questions or responses coming up, so I'm just going to move on happily to the next issue I'd like to raise, and that is to ask if I could use this plenary opportunity to address our NMCP managers or their representatives here, aside from the training needs identified last Wednesday and throughout these discussion sessions. May I ask that if there is anything you feel APMEN Vector Control Working Group or APMEN in general can possibly help your program to work more smoothly or better, please send us those suggestions by email. And it could be anything like, let's arrange a monthly South-to-South 2-hour discussion forum to put problems or issues on the table, to throw ideas around, auto biting, whatever, bednet issues, or particular topics you want us to put on APMEN Tech Talk webinars for presentations. If you have suggestions, please let us know. If there are issues you'd like to discuss, to learn more about, to put on the table for discussion, please let us know. So here's somebody, Michael McDonald, as usual, a fountain of information. The Mekong Outdoor Malaria Transmission Network, a meeting took place at Kasetsat University in 2016. And in that chat box, he also gives a website where presumably the minutes are provided. So, one final point from me. Our APMEN Vector Control Working Group intends to start up a new journal club type of webinar. So, you know, you go to Malaria World or Journal of Medical Entomology, every once in a while there's a good article published, highly relevant to vector control in Asia Pacific. And I just feel it would be great to have some kind of platform where one of the authors, the primary author or whatever of that particular article can spend 10 minutes presenting the key findings of that publication and allow opportunity for questions and answers during that, following that 10-minute presentation session. So we've got 2 presentations lined up for next week, Thursday, 27th of May at 4 p.m. Bangkok time. That's going to be our first APMEN VCWG Journal Club discussion, 2 presentations. And the one is by Sarah Kanavati and et al. On mosquito net ownership, utilization, and preferences among mobile and migrant populations sleeping in forests and farms in central Vietnam, a cross-sectional study. That was published in the American Journal of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene on April the 5th. And there's a second publication, and this isn't vectors, it's broad. And Jui Shah is going to present that publication on behalf of multiple co-authors, and it will be on implementation and success factors from Thailand's 137 surveillance strategy for malaria elimination, and that was published in Malaria Journal a few weeks ago. So those 2 publications, 10-minute presentations on each of them next week, Thursday 4 p.m. Bangkok time. Notification will be sent out tomorrow, I believe. So please save the date. If you're interested, please link up. Let's chat about these things. If you have any other ideas of how APMEN VCWG can help in whatever small way, let us know. So on Wednesday, our next session, our final session, will be devoted to private sector engagement in vector control and how to strengthen that private sector engagement and target it for improved achievement of malaria elimination targets. And so we've got some great speakers lined up for them. Let me not start. Well, yes, you can see it on the agenda, which is on the orene.org website. Top left, you'll see conferences. Click on it. The drop-down bar will show you this particular conference, and then you just go and click on day 4. 19th of May, and the various presentations will be shown there, and there will be breakout groups, 2 breakout groups to discuss those issues that I've raised about private sector participation. So I still see no additional raised hands or questions. So, I think the logical thing to do is end our discussions here for today. Dr. Rose, do you want to give a closing remark or two? Just thank our audience for, as usual, a wonderful discussion and participation. Please, Dr. Rose.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Leo, for moderating this conference. Very good. I think you also share your experience and knowledge in this conference. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank all the distinguished audience for being patient to be with us for this 2 hours. Dr. Leo, 2 hours conference.
Correct.
And
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, yes. And I would like to thank our speaker, Dr. Janarun, and also Dr. Lucia Fernandez for their excellent presentations, and of course for the audience who participate in this conference. I believe that we have learned a lot of things from this conference, and we can try to practice what are the best practice that has been done in other countries, and also that has been suggested by WHO, especially in the DHIS2 entomological tool. I think that as a program manager, we will try our best to develop a comprehensive surveillance system, not only comprehensive, but also reliable data, timely, and also accurate data. So I think once we have a good surveillance system, then this surveillance system can support our program in achieving the zero human malaria indigenous. Thank you very much, and hope to see you all again on the 19th, right, Dr. Leo?
Absolutely, yes. Dr. Rose, sincere thank you for your comments there and your time spent joining us and listening in and sharing. Thank you, Dr. Rose. I'm just going to comment quickly here on a comment by Tom Burkhardt to all panelists. Did you try without the light, but with CO2, or use CO2 with a different trap? Maybe a BG biogen which has a different airflow than CDC light trap. So I don't know what the context is of that question, Tom, but just to say, interesting. It's interesting for me because I did exactly that with the CDC light traps in Africa, and it works very well. If you don't have if your battery runs out or something, but you still have some dry ice, CO2, it works. I can't remember if it works as well, but it worked very well, I recall, even without the light. So CO2 is a very powerful attractant. So again, thank you everyone for your participation. Please see you Wednesday. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Rose.
Bye.
And thank you for the technical team in the background. Tin, Dr. Fawn, and Wulan. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to the technical team. Thank you for your
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.